And then I got called in for a meeting just under a week later, and they basically gave me an ultimatum, like, you pull that down or there will be consequences. The consequences were never made clear. It was like, you take it down or else.
Just finally on work and COVID, were you still on a retainer? Were you still getting paid?
So we were paid a certain amount per month, and then when we went back to work, that was deducted gradually from our wages.
Oh, it's like a loan.
Yeah. So what we'd been paid was then taken out of our earnings when we went back. So we knew we had something coming in. It wasn't very much, but then that was then redeemed. And so I hated COVID. I didn't know what was going on. And basically for me, what happened was just before COVID, my storyline, I was about to have a really big storyline. So every year the show do a stunt. And for the first time, I think ever, I was going to be involved in the stunt, and it was going to have massive repercussions for my character. And there was a whole big storyline off the back of it. I was really excited about it. Cue COVID, cue going back to filming. So I think we were off for about 4 months before we returned. Then when we returned, there were very strict protocols in place. Obviously, distancing, masks, no physical contact, obviously. We were all put into isolated dressing rooms, whereas before that we'd shared. We weren't allowed in the green room, which was our communal space. So it was such a weird environment to go back to, because you sort of, from something that had been such a communal sort of not experience, but a communal environment, to suddenly being isolated and then trying to perform emotional scenes that required contact. Like, I went back and my character got married, so I had to do a wedding with literally like the bride and groom with this far apart. You weren't
kissing your husband or anything?
We couldn't even hold hands. So trying to do this emotion, and they would cheat everything so that it looked, then when it went on screen, it looked like you were closer. But ultimately, if you're not, like, you don't have that connection, it's really hard to perform. And I'd have emotional scenes with the girl that played my daughter, where I wanted so desperately to like cuddle her, and I couldn't. And so I found it really then had a detrimental effect to the script and the performance, because ultimately you ended up playing it slightly different to how it was supposed to be. And also my storyline changed. So the big storyline that I had,
what was that big stunt that was going to happen?
So Mandy's always been very much about appearance, because she was a model, and she was going to, I think there was a firework that was sort of going to backfire, and so she was going to get a big old scar down her neck and shoulder, and then have real like sort of issues with appearance.
This is the real reason you left, isn't it? You didn't
I just didn't want to sit in makeup for 4 hours every morning having a scar put on. No, I was really excited about it. Like, for me, and I hadn't been that busy with the show pre-COVID either. I had a busy period during my storyline where my character had an affair, and then it had sort of quietened down. So I was really excited to be doing something that actually meant something and that I could really get into. But yeah, because of that, we couldn't do the stunt when we went back. So there was a lot of things that just couldn't happen. And I went from being, well, I would have been really busy to being really quiet, and really, I feel like my characters just sort of got lost. Like, they didn't know what to do. Like, this storyline had gone, everything changed. So not only was I going in and the place was a different place to work and it was very isolated, I was going in and I wasn't doing the storyline I was supposed to be doing, and everything changed, and no one really knew what was going on, because I think they were all fine, the company were finding their feet with what they could and couldn't do, and the writers were struggling because what can we write where, it's not essential that these characters have contact, and how can we make it real? And through COVID, I'd been trying to think again, sat still going, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Trying to think of different ways that I could bring money in, and things that I could do that I could work around my job. So even when I was quiet, like I've said before, you're essentially on call. So if they ring you and go, such person's phoned in sick, we need you in an hour. You've got to drop everything and you've got to go. So I couldn't do something that, one, would mean that I was unavailable. You've got to be very careful with what you do, because everything's got to be signed off. So I couldn't go, if I knew that I was going to be quiet for 3 weeks and I got offered an episode of an amazing drama, I couldn't go and do that, because they wouldn't give me permission, because you might be unavailable when you're needed and the show was first priority, and rah. So I was trying to think of ways that I could do something for me that would, one, give me something to do when I wasn't busy, and two, might bring in some extra money, so I knew that I had something. And it was a photographer actually that mentioned, it wasn't OnlyFans, but he was like, why are you putting all your images on Instagram? He went, you could be selling those. Like, you should be getting money for those. He suggested like selling them to tabloids. But you don't, nowadays you get pittance for that. And it's sort of not worth it. So I was like, I'm just enjoying doing photo shoots. I'd just hit 40. I'd been training really hard. I was feeling really confident. I was sort of getting lovely messages from other women, other mums, other women, over 40, going, you're really inspiring me to be confident and feel my best and sort of fuck what age I am, because that doesn't matter. Like, it's just a number. And so that was really, for me, really motivating and really inspiring to hear that. So I was doing these photo shoots. I was loving them. It came off his comment that I was like, there might be something in this. So I started looking at other platforms to put my content on. And someone mentioned OnlyFans. I was like, no, like, because my instant sort of reaction was what everyone's is, that no, it's porn. So you've got the wrong end of the stick. That's not what I'm thinking. But actually then when I started looking into it, I realized that there's everything on there. It doesn't have to be explicit content. There's sort of guitar lessons on there or yoga classes. And then, you do have full-blown porn on there. Like, it's a platform for everyone to do basically whatever they want. So I looked at OnlyFans. I sort of skirted around that. I went and looked at other platforms like Patreon, and there are other versions of OnlyFans. I looked at setting up my own website that was a subscription, so just my own platform.
And what were you going to put on it? Just sexy pics, or were you going to get juicy?
No, never juicy. I don't do explicit content. So basically the images that I was putting on Instagram were lingerie and bikini. So I always compare it to the lads mags of the noughties. Yep. So FHM,
Nuts, Zoo.
Yeah, not even Nuts, because Nuts was more like your page 3. But yeah, the FHM, the Maxim, like GQ. Not that I ever did GQ, but those sort of mags.
Yeah, like stylized shoots with a bit of a budget.
Yeah, and a bit like, some of them are a little bit implied. Like the calendars, like one of the first calendars I ever did, and I actually found the picture of it the other day. And I think I must have been 17, 18. And it's me in a pool with bikini bottoms on, this big necklace, and I'm covering my boobs. So I'm basically topless and I'm just covering my boobs. So that's implied. Yep. So so the stuff that I've been doing all my life, basically, but moving it off my Instagram and putting it on OnlyFans. One, so that I could keep my Instagram more. So Instagram is a
funnel.
It's an income revenue, It basically, you can make money off Instagram, right? So, but you have to sort of have your niche, your USP. And for me, it was a bit of a mix mash of everything. I had this conversation with my manager and we were like, well, I tell you what, why don't we move all the sort of sexy images, not all of them, but like, let's take that content, move that somewhere else so that 1, it's in a different space. 2, if people want it, there's a way of accessing it. And 3, I own the copyright. Because the other thing about Instagram is that you put a picture up, anyone can lift it. So these pictures were being lifted and put on the Daily Star, Daily Mail Online, like with whatever sort of content and quote they wanted to put with it. Which bullshit stories that they run, don't they? It's a story about nothing, basically. It's usually like flashes the flesh or something like that, literally the same every time. And then I could keep my Instagram more like fitness, beauty, fashion, and parenting, which is like sort of, my Instagram for me is quite organic. I just sort of try and put my life on there. So it was nice to move those away, and then I could work with brands on all that other stuff, which I still do. And so I had this idea. I looked into the platform, I looked into how it worked. We got a contact at the platform, had a conversation with them. I aired all my concerns with them.
Oh, you can actually talk to a proper person. It's not like a Facebook or an Instagram.
Yeah, well, I don't know whether that's because of I had a profile already. I don't know, if other users of, Susan down the road started an account, if she could get hold of them. I don't know. Again, this is just my experience, but my manager was able to get hold of someone and we had conversations. So I was able to sort of really, because I was like, I need to understand this before I jump on there. And I still don't know whether it's for me and how does it work, and had chats with them. Then I had chats with Line Pictures, which they deny, but this happened, and told them what I wanted to. First I emailed and they were like, right, you need to speak to this person. Had a Zoom call with this lady and basically went, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. It won't be explicit content.
Why were you even telling them, just as a courtesy, or is it contractually?
Because so everything has to be run past them. And also I thought, well, again, I didn't want to jeopardize my job.
Yeah.
That wasn't what I was doing it for. I didn't want to leave. My intention was never to leave. It was just to have something for me to do.
Yeah.
And maybe, I didn't even know it was going to make money, but maybe another source of income. And sort of went through those avenues, spoke to them. They were like, right, okay. Obviously their concerns were the same as mine to begin with. And I explained everything to them. And they eventually got back and were like, we're going to okay this internally. We trust you. We know, I've obviously been part of the show for a long time. So that was that. And then I launched, I think just before Halloween on a Friday night. And I thought, right, I did a big Instagram post about it, about why I was doing it, about what my content was going to be. And I launched, and I remember sitting on my sofa in my kitchen and just watching the subscribers going up, watching the money going up and going, what? Like, saying to my husband, I was like, you're not gonna believe this. Because, for me, I was like, I might get 1 subscriber. I might get 200. I just didn't know.
Can you tell us some numbers? What was that first month?
I don't talk about figures because I just don't. I never have. Yeah. But it exceeded all expectations.
In relative terms, it was better than a month on Hollyoaks.
Yeah. I mean, I think my second month on the platform was better than a year on Hollyoaks.
Wow.
So that's sort of where I was at. But that first week, I knew that I was onto something great. And I was doing nothing different. I was literally shooting the content. Apart from I was shooting some stuff at home. So whereas I've been doing all professional shots to keep on top of like the amount of content that you need for OnlyFans, I self-shoot some stuff as well now. So I do a bit of both. And again, that was my thing with that, was that I can do this like after I finish filming. I can do this of a weekend. I can do this when I'm off work and Stanley's at school. It's my little boy. So it was the perfect thing to work around the show, to not interfere with my filming schedule, to still be on call, to still be doing what I was doing, but just move my content from one platform to another. Did that, launched it. It was really successful. I went to a wedding that weekend. That was great. I did a podcast the following week with Nat Anderson, a lovely podcast. Everyone was so positive about it.
Was that podcast specifically to talk about the OnlyFans at the time, or did you have it booked in anyway?
That, I think she got me on to sort of chat about that. I mean, we talked about everything, but she was like, this is amazing. I love that you've taken back control. Like I say, everything was really positive. The feedback that I got, there was only a handful of negative feedback. So I was like, this is amazing. Like, I didn't hear anything from work. So I was like, okay, cool. Right. They knew about it. So I hadn't told them specifically when I was launching, but obviously we'd had these conversations. And then I got called in for a meeting the following week. So at this point, the platform had been live just under a week. So in terms of...
Had you been in work during that week?
No, because I was really quiet at the time. So prior to this, I'd had a meeting with the Hollyoaks producer at the time to air my concerns, to sort of go, look, what's going on? I'm not in. I don't know what's going on with my character. I'd been having lots of, like you were saying before, about input. So I'd been getting scripts and they hadn't really been making sense, or it didn't really fit with my character's sort of dialogue. And so I'd been having weekly sort of check-ins with some of the producers to sort of talk through any concerns, and they've been great in terms of going, right, okay, well, we can tweak that, and yeah, I understand why that, or this is in because of that, so that needs to stay. So it had felt like I'd had much more input. It was great. And then I had a meeting with the producer, which I fought to get. I just couldn't get in with her at all because she was quite new and quite busy. So I fought. I got this meeting eventually, and I went in and aired my concerns and sort of was like, look, I'm not busy. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what direction you take my character in. And she was basically like, neither do we. So I was like, right, I just signed a new contract at this point, and contracts were annual. So I was at the beginning of a new contract. So I sort of felt safe in that. I thought, well, I've just signed for another year, so I must be okay. But I'm not in any episodes. I'm not doing anything. All my ties with my character had sort of been cut. Like, she'd left her partner. She'd moved out of her home. A daughter had moved in with someone else. It felt very much like I was being separated.
But you're getting paid during this point, though.
You're getting paid a retainer.
Right. So it's a retainer, and then X amount, and every time you appear on an episode.
Yeah. So you sort of get your retainer, and then you get, the busier you are, the better. Basically, you get paid your episodes, and you get paid repeat fees. You get paid production days. You get paid overtime. So you want to be in because that's when you make money. If you're not in, I mean, it's minimal. And yeah, I had this meeting, and I said at the end of the meeting, I went, should I be worried? And she said, I can't answer that question at the moment. So I came out, I literally cried for 3 days after that.
That's a yes.
Exactly. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I went into that meeting for some reassurance. I went in for her to go, look, we're a bit lost at the moment. We're finding our feet, but rest assured, you are important to us. We will, this character, we've got plans, don't worry. And she basically said, check in again in 3 months. So this is post-COVID, obviously, when money wasn't great anyway, because we'd had this big old lull. And I was like, that's another 3 months of my life where I'm going, what is going on?
But were you feeling a bit more relaxed, as pissed off as you were that they wouldn't talk openly to you or wouldn't make a decision? At this point, you're also now starting to see some zeros clock up from OnlyFans. So
well, I hadn't started OnlyFans at this point, but that for me was of the catalyst. Right. So that's what I mean. I'd had this meeting. I'd already had conversations with them about starting the platform. Then I had this meeting with the producer, and I came out and I literally felt so worthless and so demoralized and just sort of undervalued, I guess. And it comes back to that, not caring. I put so much of my life into that character, into that role and into that show. And to sort of go into a meeting like that and be told, we don't know what's going on, and this might be the end for you, but we can't tell you, come back in 3 months' time. I was like, and I was unhappy there anyway. So I was like, what am I doing? So I think for me, that was a catalyst to go, right, well, I might as well give this a go. I might as well, because if it doesn't work, and I even have this conversation with my parents. And I remember my dad going, well, what have you got to lose? If it doesn't work, then you're in the same situation as you were before. And if it does work, bingo. So yeah, so I launched it and it did work. And, I could see after that first week that it was the right thing to do. And I felt better. I felt in control. I felt empowered. I felt positive. And I was like, this, with your gut, don't you? And I was like, this is right for me. This feels right. The response has been amazing. And then I got called in for a meeting just under a week later. And they basically gave me an ultimatum. Like, you pull that down or there will be consequences. The consequences were never made clear. It was like, you take it down or else.
And what was you feeling there and then? Was there an argument or was it fuck you, I'm ready for this?
There was an argument in that I was like, you give me a clear explanation as to why, because their argument was it's an over 18s platform. I was like, I know, but my content's not over 18. Okay, so what is the difference between those images being on Instagram and those images being behind a paywall, other than you are not benefiting from that money? What is the difference? It's over 18s. And it just kept coming back to that. And so I was like, well, until you give me a reason, I'm not taking it down, because why would I? And that went on, that was a Thursday, and then that went on. So then we obviously had the weekend, which they were like, you need to think about this. And then on the following Wednesday morning, I got an email that terminated the contract, just like that, with immediate effect. So I didn't even get to go back in to sort of wrap up the storyline or give some closure on the character or say goodbye to people, which is fine, because, the people that I'm friends with, I see anyway. But to sort of just cut the cord like that.
And how did they kill your character?
They didn't. She's still floating around in America somewhere.
Okay. So, but when that happened, I guess you probably already made your mind up. You were ready to accept it. And was it still a shock? Were you scared or angry? Did you get a lawyer, or did you just think, fuck it, on to chapter 2?
I was obviously pissed off, because it was more the way that they did it, and and I made notes before this meeting that I had, and I found the notes actually the other day, and I was like, so part of the notes were, you're reprimanding me for doing something that I've been contractually bound to do my whole life, right? And the other one was, I'm a 40-year-old woman, you don't own me, I feel worthless, I feel undervalued. All of these are the things that I made the notes on, that I looked back the other day and went, oh my God, yes, I 100% made the right decision. That's where I was. And why would you stand for that or settle for that?
And do you think it was as simple as they're not happy because they're not earning, or do you think as well it's because I know you're doing no different content to what they'd ask you to do anyway, but do you think it's one rule for us, one rule for them, that they want to try and pretend to be, I don't mean pretend to be family friendly, but you know what I mean, that they can say, well, we're a family show, even though they're pushing you to do stuff they don't want. I mean, was it for them to keep up appearances?
Possibly. Apparently one cast member complained. Love to know who that was. And apparently Hey,
that one you knocked back in
one,
1998
yeah.
at the
One
staff
person
party.
complained. And I think one viewer wrote in. Possibly. I mean, but then the hypocrisy of it, and I flagged this a few months later when there were a couple of the guys on the show, pre-Watershed, with basically implied nudity with their asses out. And I'm like, hang on a minute. So it's okay for the show to do that with men, but for me as a female to do that on my own terms, you're not okay with. I mean, what you tell me what the difference is there? I don't understand that. And again, like I've pulled out things from over the years where there's been, you know, one of the actresses on the show topless holding 2 melons in front of her tits, and you know, another one where there's a girl stripped off, I think I did one in a swimming pool where I lost my bikini top. It's like all of that's okay. And it's okay for you to do the late night episodes where, again, there was a girl that I was living with and she had to simulate a sex scene on the Hollyoaks later. And she came home from work that night crying her eyes out because the guy she was working with, she felt really uncomfortable with. And there were no, like now I think they have intimacy coordinators on set. There was never any of that when I was in the show younger. So if you had to kiss someone or sort of like be groped by someone, it just happened. And there was no sort of, right, we're going to do this, or is it okay if I do this, or, you know, almost paint by numbers. So you know what's going to happen and there's no shocks and you don't feel uncomfortable. There was none of that. But for them to do that, that's fine. But for me to do this on my own terms is not. And that's where I think because they went to the press, I didn't go to the press. So that night, it was suddenly all over the press that I'd been fired, which I would never go around going, oh my God, I've been sacked, everyone. Like, why would you want that on your CV? But they gave me no choice but to then I had to defend myself because I found myself in the situation where it was everywhere and I didn't anticipate that. You know what I mean? I wasn't intending on leaving the show.
And the person who fired you, what's happened to them since then?
She's just been fired.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What for?
I don't, for not being very good at her job, I think. Right. I think apparently this is according to the press, so take it with a pinch of salt. Apparently the show's viewing figures are the lowest they've ever been and they had to do something about it. So I think her and 2 other producers have been sacked. Does it
make you feel happy that she's gone? Or
not happy. Gone? I'm not that sort of person, but I do believe in karma. What goes around comes around. And it makes me feel sort of better that she's not there for other people because, you know, if it's not a nice place to work and if it's gone downhill since I was there, then they need to appoint someone that cares about the show and that cares about the people that work on it.